Hi everyone, welcome to our review of the Grand Prix of Österreich.
Well, nearly. I mean, it's not.
on.
No, it's not far. It's not far off. I mean, like, you know, I'll give you a 5.5 out of 10.
Do you notice how I always look towards you for approval? It's never towards Neil.
No, Neil approves of everything you do, Adam.
Well, for those misguided or unfortunate enough to be watching us on YouTube, the hills behind us were alive with the sound of
two strokes.
Indeed, that
and was it an RC212V or the 213V? The Casey Stoner was riding around there. Plus, there was an MV Augusta. There are loads of really class bikes.
Was that your moment from this Grand Prix, Dave?
It was not my moment from this Grand Prix, but it was a very good moment. It was very good.
Before you get onto your moment, a reminder of everybody what we're going through on this podcast. We're actually going to tackle some of your questions that were sent to us through social media and through Patreon to all of our listeners and subs on there. Thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed the Paddock Note shows that we've been delivering through the weekend. We're going to go through several talking points. There's also been some newsworthy items that we're going to delve into as well on this particular podcast. We've got some fantastic audio that we grabbed in the pit lane while the teams were frantically packing up because, of course, we have the next round of MotoGP in just 7 days' time. Neil, you grabbed some time with Frankie Carchedi, and there was lots of boisterous activity going on in the Gresini pit box, and I spoke to Andreas Madrid, Brad Binder's crew chief, after what was a positive weekend for the Red Bull KTM crew. So we got those coming up in the podcast as well. We'll also go through some of the predictions that we had through our Patreon page and some of our harsh or maybe gentle forecasts, or I don't know, summaries, I guess you could say, of this latest round of the World Championship. Dave, please go back to telling us about your moment.
My moment was especially. I mean, you really saw it on the onboard of Pecco Bagnaia, his last lap of the sprint race. The bike shaking like crazy. I mean, like really looking like it was trying to throw him off.
Are you picking on Pecco?
I am not picking on Pecco. I actually feel quite sorry for Pecco. I mean, like, Pecco just had an utterly miserable GP, which we shall talk about later. But that onboard, because it also feels like it's not just that things aren't going well for him in terms of his performance. Just like it just seems to have the worst possible luck by the rear spinning up on the at the start of the sprint race, for example, and then all of that shaking, which knocked the pads back into sort of into the calipers, so that he had no brakes. That happened 3 or 4 times, and he just parked it. Decided it was the discretion was the better part of valor.
My moment actually is Pecco related as well, and it's in the main race today. I just felt the moment when Pedro Acosta and Fermin Aldeguer both sort of breezed past him, and
barged, I think is a more suitable word.
Well, I mean, Bagnaia afterwards in his debrief said he didn't feel that was particularly aggrieved or aggressive. He just said that's what happens when you're that much slower than everybody else, with a sort of a shoulder shrug of full lament. And it didn't feel like a passing of the torch, but there was definitely like a kind of younger generation, a bit more of a feisty feel. I mean, we have a double world champion not having a good time at all in the Premier class of this World Championship, and that was like 2 young upstarts just ready to sort of say, listen, if you can't sort yourself out, mate, then we're going through.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we will come on to Pecco later, but that's also partly the nature of the track. There is, because it's such a stop and go track, the way that you pass here is you literally just have to send it. You get in. It's all block passes, or it's taken away a rider's line. Well, you just have to put your head in front, put your wheel in front and hope for the best.
Well, John Mir said it was one of his favourite tracks, but also one of the toughest in that respect. But Neil, what was your moment?
My moment was not a single moment, but more kind of period, which was the late period of the MotoGP race. I have to say I'm feeling a lot more buoyant than I was expecting to. Dave and I actually made a pact before the MotoGP race to say, no matter what happens, we're going to be positive about this.
Have you taken some medication? Or
and we didn't even need to be that positive or try that hard, because it was quite interesting, quite fun. And I just thought the last 5, 6, 7 laps where Fermin Aldeguer was on this incredible charge from 5th position to get right up into second, and from one point look as though he might be capable of reeling in Marc Marquez, was quite remarkable. I was just going back through the times. Lap 15, he was 4.1 seconds back of Bezzecchi in the lead at that time, 3.5 seconds back of Marc, and come the race finish, he had close to within a second of Marc, I think 0.8 seconds, and he had left Bezzecchi for dead. He was 2.3 clear of him, and it felt like a real breakthrough ride for the rookie. We're going to obviously talk a bit more about him, but yeah, that late charge from him was definitely my moment.
Well, let's talk about the winner, as if we haven't done enough already. Marc Marquez, 6 in a row, 6 of the best. First one in Austria.
6 doubles in a row.
6 doubles. Could you be any more emphatic? I mean, the first, it was his longest sequence for, 11 years?
Yep.
Since 2014. So, you've been talking about it recently, Dave. It's just a question of when rather than if. We've left if well behind.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's quite clear that he's that Marc is going to be champion. He leads by, I think, 144 points or 147. He leads by a lot of points.
142.
142 points. There you go. It's the question is when it's going to happen. The other thing is we know. It's not just that he has a big lead. No one has looked like being able to lay a glove on him. So it really is. We had a question in from Donald Oliver asking where will Marc win the championship. I have a spreadsheet, of course. In that spreadsheet, I have basically sort of 2 conclusions, or sort of like 2 possible calculations. One, if Marc wins everything, and Alex finishes second. At the moment, if that happens, then he definitely wins in Mandalika, and if Alex Marquez drops more than 10 points between now and Motegi, then he wins in Motegi, and if he drops, I think, 56 points more, which is a fair amount, but spread over 3 weekends, that he could still win in Misano. I think Misano will be difficult, but I mean, it's probably going to be Motegi. It's definitely going to be Mandalika. But even if Alex Marquez wins all of the sprint races and all of the main races until the end of the season, and Marc only finishes second, Marquez still wins the championship by, I think, something like 70 points.
I love your spreadsheets.
I love my spreadsheets too. I have a very intimate. It's great to be able to actually see things in numbers.
Neil, maybe I'm reaching here, but Marc did kind of tease us a little bit because he crashed on Saturday. Coming out of turn 2B. It was pretty much out.
Because the left hand of his bike was damaged.
And there was, as Aldeguer was getting closer towards the end, you kind of thought, well, Marc Marquez has a particular kind of relationship with the final corner, turn 10 of this circuit, as several riders will attest. He's never won here before. Was this really ever under threat, this victory?
I don't think so, no. I mean, Dave said that it's looked as though no one can lay a glove on him. You could argue that Fermin actually looked as though he could do that towards the end of the race. But I don't think it really was in doubt, apart from...
I'm going to argue with you about that later on.
Okay. Aside from qualifying, which didn't quite go to plan, even when it doesn't go to plan, he's 4th, which is hardly a disaster. Sprint was achieved with the minimum of fuss. Bezzecchi rode an absolutely sensational race. I think Bezzecchi was a couple of laps shy of arguably putting in the performance of his career today, because for him to be leading for that long on the Aprilia at this track was really quite something. But, Marc was just so clever behind him. We know that he doesn't like to get rushed at the start of the race. He likes to just put himself somewhere comfortable, knowing that he'll come good when the tires go off a little bit and the fuel load goes down. There was one point even where he dropped back to maybe 9 tenths back of Bezzecchi, and we thought, is there a problem, or has Bezzecchi done something really special? And Marc was just saying he was overheating the front tire a bit too much, and when you do that, you stress the rear tire because you can't brake as deep and aggressively as you want to, so you're kind of a bit more critical on the rear. So he was just kind of everything in line and just trying to minimize the sort of the risk. So to cut a long story short, I don't think it really was ever that much in doubt. But just another excellent performance. And avid statistician TV Room Raccoon has informed us that that was the first time that a rider has ever won 6 in a row with 2 different manufacturers, which is another historic feat to add to the pile.
Oh, well, fair play, Miriam. Maybe we have to get you on the podcast more with that kind of information. Or pay you for your services, because we'll gladly use that in some of our copies somewhere. Just to wrap up the Marc Marquez subject, the next phase of races could really put even more of a stamp on this 2025 story, because we go to Ballanton Park, which is brand new for everybody. Marquez has already ridden there as part of the Ducati private test. Then, of course, his home Grand Prix in Barcelona, a track he's never really had much fruit. He isn't,
it's one of his worst tracks, which will at least give us hope. But then we go to Misano, where he's been really good.
Misano, he's tended to be sort of a little bit the cat amongst the pigeons. He's sort of rubbed people up the wrong way, particularly the race fans in attendance. So if he's still extending the streak there, then you can imagine the kind of resounding echo that he's spreading around MotoGP, even more so to this point. But yes, Marc Marquez today doing the business.
Yeah. And just a few little details from his weekend. I mean, it comes as no surprise that he's putting in these performances at the moment, but a couple of nice little sort of sound bites that he gave us over the weekend. I think he said on Friday, if this run comes to an end, will it be that big a deal? And he said, every morning I wake up, I look at the championship standings and I check the gap from first to second. And that's all I care about. So there is a sense that although he is on this mad run and there is a chance that he could go unbeaten until the end of the season, he's insisting that for the time being, until he wraps it up, it's all about just making sure that gap is in check.
Well, Dave and I were speculating earlier. Imagine if he does win it quite early, he achieves the main objective that he wants. What could happen thereafter? He could be going even more crazy.
Maybe he'll just let the reins off and, go Rossi 2003 on it.
Yeah.
And, try and win a race by 15 seconds. I don't know. There could be a situation like that. Who knows? Or maybe I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe we could actually see something quite interesting from him once he does seal the championship, because there'll be nothing to lose.
Yeah, he might just sort of go full on the cake and then turn up the race after having won 15 kilos heavier and with cake crumbs coming off of out of the corner of his mouth.
Yeah, and I think we should give props to our colleague Matt Oxley, who asked him a very good question on Saturday about last year at Gresini. He asked, what percentage of pay cut did you take to go from Repsol Honda to Gresini in 2024? And he said 100%, in that Gresini weren't paying him anything last year. He was asked bonuses for wins or podiums. Yes, but from my personal sponsors, not from Gresini. And we're probably correct in thinking that he was on at least 20 million euros a year.
He was on. I have been told by someone who knows that he was on 25 million a year for that 4-year contract. So he signed a 4-year deal with HRC worth 100 million euros. So that's base salary.
Yeah. So we know that he already has a lot of money in the bank, and it's not necessarily something that he needs to end his life. But people with money like to make money. And can you imagine Lionel Messi going and playing for a team for free if it gives him a better chance of winning? I really don't think so. So, you have to say, just absolutely fair play. The guy, to put himself in this position, has sacrificed a lot. Okay, he's already very well off, but there's not many people that are going to give up 20 to 25 million euros a year.
But you can always make more money. You can't win more championships. I mean, you cannot buy a championship.
Yeah, one leads to the other as well.
Yeah.
Well, the rumor is that Marc Marquez's bank manager has only just recovered. So I'm sure he'd be looking at the end of 2025 thinking, I'm back in it. So there we go. And also, I think one revealing comment from Alex Marquez, had a pretty solid day considering he had to do a long lap penalty, which I think he judged to be 2 seconds longer at least compared to the long lap sort of layout or format in Brno that, he said Marc is just on a different level.
Yep.
And for a guy who's second in the championship and could be having his personal best season in MotoGP, that's also quite a statement. Talking about Alex Marquez, we really should move on to discuss his teammate, Fermin Aldeguer, ride of the day, Neil.
I think so, yeah. I mean, you could make a case for him being the rider of the day in the sprint because our colleague Pete McLaren did some calculations from lap 8 of the sprint through to lap 14, the second half of the race. I think only Marc was marginally faster. We've seen a couple of occasions this year where Fermin has been really, really strong towards the end of the race. I think it was as early in the year as Kota, where he was the fastest rider on track in the second half before he binned it. There's been another couple of instances like that. I caught up with his crew chief, Frankie Carchedi, in Brno, I think it was, and Frankie always talks his riders up, and I honestly thought he might be exaggerating a bit, because he said, honestly, Fermin's not that far away from being able to fight at the front with Marc, and I was like, I mean, come on. Like, we're talking about a rookie here, and we're talking about Marc Marquez in arguably his strongest ever shape. But yeah, and another thing, this was a terrible track for Fermin in Moto2. He was hopeless here last year. I checked his Moto2 results in 3 previous appearances. I think he had a best finish of 9th, 2 non-scores. And at this point last year, there were genuinely credible rumours that Ducati were thinking twice about putting him in MotoGP next year because he was having his struggles in Moto2
turgid,
this point last year were that profound.
Yeah.
He really was not convincing, and it seemed like we've kind of maybe given this to him a year too soon. I think those were genuine concerns. So for him to be at this point in his rookie season where he is on the podium, where he's looking like the strongest rider in the second half of the race, yeah, remarkable.
You've made a very good point there. He does look like the strongest rider in the second half of the race. The trouble is he's very weak in the first half of the race. That's his real weakness. That's the reason why he's not able to actually challenge Marc. Why because basically he arrived to within a second of Marc, and Marc realised, okay, no, he's a little bit too fast. I better step it up a little bit. But he only needed to step it up a little bit to keep that cushion between him. Now, we know that Marc plans his races around not pushing too much early on to save a little towards the end, but it feels like Aldeguer is not sort of not pushing. He hasn't really quite figured out those first few laps. It's something he got to work on. If he figures that out and can keep his speed in the second half, then it gets really interesting.
Yeah, and all weekend, or well, certainly from Saturday, he was the fastest of everyone in Sector 3, which is the sector which contains the 2 left-handers in Turn 6 and Turn 7. We know that Marc Marquez loves left-handers.
Yep.
And he even brought this up in the press conference afterwards. He thought, how is he doing this? Well, he's got this kind of ability to carry corner speed, especially with this rear tire construction, which is slightly different here this weekend because of the high demands placed on the rear tire. And, for even Marc to be sort of questioning, how is this guy faster than me in my strong point? Really genuinely quite impressive and quite surprising. So, and backed up by our Patreon followers because we did a vote for the Rider of the Weekend, and 69% at the time of recording have voted for Fermin. Marco Bezzecchi, who's next up with 13%. So, yeah.
We asked a question earlier in the season, which is still valid, and very quickly a response from both of you. We said, is it the bike? The GB24, arguably the best motorcycle in the modern MotoGP era. You put it up against the Honda RCV, or even like peak Yamaha M1, when it was still quite fast. Or is it the fact that Aldeguer is a next sort of generational talent? We were kind of mixed in our initial kind of answers to that. Do we lean one way or the other? Because Aldeguer is still making typical rookie errors, as you would expect.
I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent because Fabio Di Giannantonio we were talking about the struggles between the GP25 and the GP24. Di Giannantonio said, "Look, there's no difference between the GP25 and the GP24." But he also said, he didn't ride a GP24; he rode a GP23. He did say that the window on a GP25 is quite narrow, and it looks like then a window on this. So the setup window where you've got really strong usable performance seems to be on a GP24 seems to be much better. Now that gives Fermin Aldeguer a big advantage because he's not searching around for something very, very small and precise. But it's clear he's a big talent.
Yeah, you said, is it him or is it the bike? I think you have to add into that equation, is it the team? And Frankie Carchedi, who has real proven track record of bringing rookies up to the top level of MotoGP. See his time with Joan Mir. He knows what a rookie needs. He knows what a rookie expects. And from the first part of working together, they were looking at how to be strong on used tyres. And I think this was something that Fermin, in his best times in Moto2, was able to manage as well. So, I think it's a combination of those three things.
Well, we've got some great audio on this podcast. You spoke to Frankie. We're going to play the first 2 minutes of that. So if you want to hear the full file, then just head over to our Patreon page. If you're looking on YouTube, then you'll see the link in the description of the video. Regular listeners will know where to find us, but it's patreon.com/Paddock Pass Podcast. You can hear the full audio if you head over there. But here's a sneak snippet of what Frankie had to say to you this afternoon from pit lane.
So I'm here with Frankie Carchedi, crew chief to Fermin Aldeguer, after that amazing performance. It may have been a surprise to some people watching, Frankie, but having spoken to you, just before the summer break, I don't think this was actually much of a surprise to you. You've been thinking this has been coming.
It's been coming, I think, for quite a few races where we have the end of race pace to be fast. Unfortunately, we sort of have to come from quite far back, it's a little bit dictated where we qualify, and I think we squeezed in on Friday, and we always get better Saturday, Sunday, so it just gives them a bit of breathing. We improve Saturday, and then when you start second row, it's a little bit easier, even if we did lose 4 positions at the start. But no, we actually made a change in his riding position this weekend, so we analysed a lot over the summer break. Where we were good, where we were weak. We made a small alteration, and fingers crossed, it was a good sign today.
Yeah. I mean, what is it about Fermin that makes him so strong in the second parts of the race? We saw it in the sprint yesterday. I think aside from Mark, he was the fastest from lap 8 onwards. And we've seen it several times throughout this season. For a rookie, it's quite impressive. What is it that he's doing? And maybe what is it with the setup that you're using that helps in that area?
We all have our own way of working. I think actually yesterday because we did it 29.4 with 3 laps to go, so we knew we were pretty strong compared to the others. Obviously all of the analysis with how much tyre use and everything, so everything was pretty good. Fermin has his own natural abilities. We don't try and take that away. He's very good on tyres anyway, even if, I'll be honest, from the start of the year, that's what we worked on primarily. And then when you have that, you start working on pure speed whilst maintaining the tyre life. So we've always had that. I think even from round 3 at Austin, we were the fastest at the end. We just missed that first few laps, pure speed. And little bit by little bit, with more experience, we get closer. But we have to still remember, I think Hungary's a little bit different, but in general, Friday's always tough because we start from scratch. So, it's not like you get a podium second here and you go FP1 at the next race and you're going to be in the top 3 straight away. It doesn't work like that. So we have to maintain the focus, and I think on Friday, try and squeeze in that top 10 because we know we'll only get quicker from there on.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say, coming into this season, there were some question marks about Fermin. Last year didn't go to plan. He didn't maybe challenge for the Moto2 Championship like a lot of people were expecting him to. But as you said, from Austin, he's been, one of the fastest guys at the end of the race. How have you found working with him? Is he a different character to previous riders that you've worked with? What's the kind of feeling like in the box with him?
They're all different in their own way. What I love about him, and to be honest, I think I'm a very fortunate person because...
Dave, listener questions. Idirian and Adam Cole said, could Fermin be considered for a factory seat if Pecco continues to struggle? Is this as far-fetched as we would think, or could it actually happen?
Yes. For 26, yes. For 27, all bets are off for 27. All the seats are open. It's a completely different world. We don't even know what bikes Ducati is going to be running next year. They'll probably all be called GP26s, but they might all be GP24s. We just don't know. They might all be the bike that Marc is riding. We just don't know. But I don't think he's going to be in contention for a factory seat next year. But if he keeps this up, then for sure Ducati will be looking at him, with the proviso that Ducati really like to have Italian riders.
No, very quickly, would anybody apart from Alex Marquez want to be Marc Marquez's teammate?
Someone who doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
After this year,
seeing the state that Pecco Bagnaia was in during his debrief, I'm guessing that was a segue to talk about Pecco. Am I right?
No, not really. It was just something that sprung up.
Just judging.
We don't want a Pecco bash as much as we can.
Like Dave was saying earlier, I think I've quite rightly been a bit critical of Pecco in the last couple of weeks, but today I just felt so sorry for him. He just looked absolutely destroyed. To see a 3-time champion reduced to the figure that he was today in his debrief, where he was just completely unable to explain what the hell is going on at the moment. It was quite sad to see, to be honest. And and that's what happens when Marc Marquez is on the other side of the box.
However, I do think that it is easier. So Pecco Bagnaia was the number one rider, and Marc came into his garage in a similar way that happened to Dani Pedrosa when Marc Marquez came into his garage. It's different so for Fermin Aldeguer going into a factory Ducati garage alongside Marc Marquez, it's a completely different dynamic. First of all, also Aldeguer is much younger. There's an age gap. There's a different approach. He's not a world champion yet. He's on an upward trend, whereas Bagnaia should be at the peak of his performance. So mentally, it's a completely different place. It's a completely different dynamic, sort of emotionally, in a sporting contests, physically. So it's very, very different.
And we know the exuberance of youth means they always think they can knock the old man from the perch.
Exactly.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Adam Cole, there must be something about people called Adam that actually write in interesting questions.
Yes. That's definitely it, Adam.
He says, what's Gresini's secret sauce for producing the results that they've achieved this year? And you might have some insight into this.
I
Dave.
will have some insight into that, but again, people are going to have to wait, because I did a really interesting interview with Michele Messini, the team manager, about, because they have had so many, with Enea Bastianini, with Marc Marquez, with Alex Marquez, Fermin Aldeguer, they bought Fabio Di Gianantonio, they turned him into a winning rider. The atmosphere and the way that they can manage the pressure around a rider, it helps being a satellite being a satellite team, because you don't have any pressure. But yeah, we will have an interview with Michele Massini on the podcast soon. That'll also be up for Patreon supporters first, much earlier. But yeah, it's about creating, and they're building on Fausto Gresini's legacy. This was what Fausto was also. If you think of the riders that he had in the past, with people like Seti Gibernau and the success that he had, Tajiro Kato, Marco Simoncelli, there's a long history of being able to do that, and it's just about having a well-run team.
Yeah, it's about making heroes or winners of unlikely figures sometimes. Yeah. That's what it's been about, but you're on the money there. Let's mention Pecco Bagnaia, because we touched on him, but of course, 3-time winner at this track. He was expecting more, decent qualification. Sprint was terrible, as you mentioned, Neil. We had questions from Callie, Janice, Clayton and Frumble saying, what was Pecco's problem? Was it a tyre, or is it just more of the same?
It was more of the same. He was heavily indicating yesterday that it was the tyre that was at fault for his struggles. But today, he was just kind of unsure, because, it was like... I guess it was like several races that we've seen so far this year, in that he started fairly well. Marc overtook him, I think, on lap 2, but he was sat there in third. Okay, not doing anything brilliant, not looking like he could challenge Marc, but looking like he was okay there for a podium. And then when the bottom fell out of it, it really just completely went away. And in the last couple of laps, once Acosta pushed him wide at turn number 9, it just seemed like he was in a downward spiral from there. Coming home all the way back in 8th position, really disappointing. 12 seconds back of Marc, and Marc's race winning time was nearly identical to Pecco's race winning time from last year. And I know there might be some differences in terms of track temperature conditions, the condition of the track as well. Pecco was making the point that is one of the things that is just so frustrating, because he's like, it's not that Marc was like 12 seconds faster than last year. He was doing the exact same time. And, I've just got much, much slower.
He was being bullied out there again, wasn't he?
And he was, yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the times between this year and last year, there was only about, I think it was about a tenth in it between Marc's winning time this year. He was 10th of a second faster than Pecco was last year, and yet Pecco was 11 or 12 seconds behind.
I don't think it's the first time he said it this year, but he mentioned in his media debrief that he just doesn't understand what's going on. And you can get the impression the team are pretty much turning the bike around, trying to find his feeling. He wouldn't attribute what kind of percentage he's bringing to it, and whether he can do an Enea Bastianini type adaptation to the style that's required of whatever Ducati have changed on the GP25. But he's clearly lost. And we asked Alex Marquez about this in his media debrief, saying, you had a similar phase on the Honda where you weren't competitive, also on the GP23. Can you kind of understand what's going on with Bagnaia? But Alex was saying he just needs a click. And I didn't really believe what Alex Marquez was saying, because it seems like much more than a click for Pecco.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting what he said on Thursday, which was he spent the second week of the summer break rewatching old races which he won from 2021, 22, 23, 24 to remind himself that he can do this. Like, that is a sign to me that his self-belief has taken an absolute demolishing in the first part of the season. And I think mentally he's probably in quite a fragile place at the moment. And it was really interesting hearing some of his interviews with the TV broadcasters today. I think it was with DAZN, the Spanish broadcaster, in which he said that his patience is kind of running out a little bit with Ducati, which is a pretty bold thing to say about the manufacturer that you've had so much success with in the past, and the manufacturer that is currently having so much success on the other side of the box. And we've always imagined, or we've always seen this relationship between Bagnaia and Ducati as this sort of dream pairing that will maybe last forever.
Italian dream.
Yeah.
But this is, these are the first signs of maybe a little bit of fraying around the edge.
Yeah. Also, he said in his debrief, like, I'm doing everything they ask of me, which again tells you that he's sort of losing patience with them. He's not having the same problems as normal. Normally, his problems is that he can't brake deep. He could do that. He could manage that with the bigger discs. His biggest problem was that he just didn't have any grip from the rear tyre. And we know that Marc is really good with the rear. This was something that Marco Bezzecchi said in the press conference. His strength is really drive and acceleration. That's where Marc is making all of the lap time. He's not worrying so much about the front. He's much better at managing the front. And it looks like what Pecco's weakness is he can't extract that same performance in terms of drive and acceleration. That is where Marc is making the difference.
Bezzecchi said something good in the press conference, did he?
He did say something good. Goodness. It was interesting, and if you'd have gone, you would have known.
Sorry, I was too busy in the paddock trying to get other audio.
And he said that because he looked around the press conference room and he didn't see Adam there. He thought, you know what? Now is the time to let loose.
All right, hold your powder. We'll come to that later. Just to finish on Pecco, Janice.
Just one more thing. I mean, I think it was earlier in the year. I can't remember when it was exactly. There were some rumours. It might have been on some sort of Facebook page or whatever, but about which was linking Pecco to a shock move to Yamaha next year, and he was asked about it, and he was like, "Come on, like, I'm a Ducati rider. I might be a Ducati rider for all my career." And it's just curious, at this point of the season, he's clearly still so frustrated at not finding any sort of answers to his predicament that, if this goes on for another season or another 12 months, you can't see this.
Well,
you can't see him being a career Ducati man.
More on Yamaha later, but I can't imagine anybody else within the most successful manufacturer in MotoGP working harder this winter than Pecco Bagnaia and Christian Gabarini and the rest of the team. There's definitely some extra homework or some yardage to be done there. Just to wrap up the section or the segment on Pecco, Janice Clayton says, how many times has Pecco crashed this season? Maybe there is a slight part of us or some of his fans who feel that he should test the limits more, or is he actually doing enough? It's a really awkward situation for him at the moment. And Dave, you dug out some of the stats, and just to sort of reply or answer in a way to Janice's question, Johann Zarco actually has the most crashes so far in 2025 as 17.
A lot more.
Alex Marquez, maybe somewhat surprisingly, on the GP24, crashing 13 times, followed by Frankie Morbidelli with 12, and Pecco just on 6.
Yeah, but if you look at the list of crash stats, it's not that Pecco isn't crashing very much. He's crashing about normal. Most of the riders, apart from the Johann Zarcos and Joan Mirs of this world, are crashing somewhere between 3 and 9 times. So that's pretty much normal. So it's not that he's not trying and he's not pushing. The problem is he just can't get the performance out of the bike.
Zarco crashing 17 times is a great example of someone who is trying and turning, certainly finding the limits.
But then it's also, once again, it is much easier for a satellite rider who's working to develop a bike for the factory to push, crash, than a rider in the factory Ducati teams who's expected to win races, expected to challenge for a championship.
I love the fact that Zarco's fell off 7 17 times, but then he managed to be only one of 2 people to win the Suzuka 8 Hour, on which he was tired of questions of by the end of the weekend. And of course, he didn't fall off in probably the most trickiest conditions that we've seen so far this season. Marco Bezzecchi, third. I mean,
Your fave.
such a weirdo weekend. He looked fucking terrible, didn't he, on Friday? And then managed to produce that lap, take pole position.
But he didn't look terrible on Friday morning. He looked.
He was abject, Dave.
He looked okay on Friday morning. Then he looked dismal on Friday afternoon.
Clueless.
Then Saturday morning he was pretty okay, and then Saturday he had the most fantastic qualifying, brilliant coming through Q1, and then an outstanding pole. Now maybe he could have had his pole taken away from him.
Yeah, he fudged the sprint. But then, full credit to him, I thought he was brilliant in the first half of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
I mean, he got the start and made the break. He just did everything he needed to do. And then, what are you gonna do when you've got like 93 red sort of looming up right behind you?
Yeah.
Fudging the sprint. I mean, 4th place isn't necessarily fudging the sprint.
The start was terrible from pole. I mean,
Yeah, he did have. He had a poor start but he had a poor start in the sprint, but he really made up for it in the start of the main race.
Yeah, and all that, what was Aprilia's bogey track in years gone by. Bezzecchi was saying in the press conference, if you were there, you would have heard this ad. But he was saying that coming into this weekend, he had a chat with Massimo Rivola, CEO of Aprilia Racing, in which Rivola tried to dampen Bezzecchi's expectations, just saying, look, we've had a bit of a shitter here in the last couple of years, so don't be expecting too much. And in spite of that, he led 19 of the race's first laps, and he's sort of developing a nice little habit of this. I mean, we saw a very similar performance from him in Brno. Mark got past him earlier, but he managed to, keep second place there. And I think he was doing this. He mentioned a couple of times that he had a bit of a problem with his bike mid-race. He wouldn't say what it was, but there was some kind of mechanical issue which was just holding him back. And okay, it wasn't like a brilliant late finale, but at least when Mark came past him, he did try and challenge him. He didn't just he wasn't completely resigned to his fate. He had a go, repassed Mark, and give the impression that he was ready to let's have a bit of a scrap here. So I think Bezzecchi before the summer break was showing signs that Aprilia could be good everywhere, but there still were some big question marks. Like, there's been tracks where Aprilia have just been hopeless before. This was one of them. Also, there's a couple of times where Aprilia were just awful when we had this kind of stiffer construction rear tire.
Yeah,
and they've improved.
And they've done it so well here. And it seems that they can now really brake very aggressively with the best of them. So
and they can start, which was a chronic sort of weakness of the motorcycle in the last 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think basically they had a very good motorcycle with a few specific weaknesses, and that's much easier to fix a bike like that than it is to fix a bike where everything needs fixing.
There's still some fragility there.
Yeah.
Ralph Fernandez, I think, put into kick the RSGP to Kingdom Come on Saturday after the rear ride height collapse. robbed him of a fantastic Saturday result.
Again, they have a new ride height device. Which Raul got I think he got for the first time this weekend. Yeah. Well, we know all about new rear ride height devices. Just ask Fabio Quartararo.
Yes, indeed.
And the rest of Yamaha. So it helps a lot in acceleration. It makes a big difference, but it also introduces more complexity means more fragility.
Tough GP for Aldeguer. I mean, he was back there sort of around the Yamahas at one point, and the rookie explaining that the centre of the tyre gets worked a lot more here as it does in Thailand at the Chang International Circuit and in Buriram rather, or whatever the name of the circuit is these days.
Chang International Circuit.
Is it still?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. And basically, so Aldeguer had a tough one, and Jorge Martin looked pretty feisty, it had to be said. I mean, he was being pushed around quite a bit, but that crash, which looked initially pretty scary, was actually quite harmless. For people that saw the replay of the fall, it looked like he caught his right leg in the rear seat aero, but he said that he was just trapped underneath the bike and it wasn't too bad. Actually, the initial concern about Martin was that, his airbag, he explained, was actually fitted too tight. So for those sort of sensitive ribs and that, that very serious problem he had after the crash at Qatar was being pressed by the interiors of the A-Stars bag.
Yeah, but again, that is also where because he really thought he was going to die at Qatar, in that Qatar crash and in the aftermath of that Qatar crash. So he's very, very sensitive about his ribs and about that feeling of having his ribs crushed. So, and when the airbags go off, they do press you inside. I know all about that because I've fallen over on wearing one and it went off. And it is quite a tight sort of pressing feeling. So yeah, that really sort of it frightened him. But then again, he came away from it, and he actually ends up coming away with it with more confidence because he's had a couple of crashes. He's not been seriously injured. You know, he's going to be at Hungary. He's going to be perfectly fine. He was perfectly fine when he turned up to us. So yeah, it's definitely going to be. It was a good weekend for him, really.
Questions. Callie says Bez's record since starting beef with Adam has been simply exceptional. Is there a correlation? Am I making him stronger somehow?
Well, what I would do is get in there, talk to his manager, and start demanding a slice of the action.
It's all part of a grand plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
podcast brought to you by Aprilia Racing.
Yeah, that's right. By Marco Bezzecchi's bonuses.
Yeah.
I'll come in wearing a big fan club T-shirt. Actually, to have beef with someone, there has to be some mutual kind of
attraction,
some grievance. And I'm sure Marco doesn't even know my name. But my problem with him is just his juvenile approach to a certain segment of his profession, which could be much better.
Yeah. I did genuinely enjoy you going on strike in this debrief this weekend, refusing to go, even though all the debriefs took place in this little tiny porta cabin, which could contain, I don't know, about 20 or 30 people.
It was very much getting to that level of that we saw in that little clip of Marc Marquez and Valentino Rossi walking past each other and blanking each other. It's very much getting to that level.
I have no interest, and I'd said before, if he wins the next 3 world championships, then I'll be writing about the dude in fourth. Rebecca says, what are the chances that Bez finishes P3 in the championship this year?
Good.
And what will the consequences be for Pecco? Not to mention Adam. That's another one directed towards me. B, if that happened.
Well, I mean, the consequences for Pecco would be that Pecco would be told that he's getting a pay cut.
Or not collect a bonus.
Yeah,
it
certainly won't be collecting bonus. I mean, I think basically, you know. Well, no, P3 is a big bonus. I remember from last year. Yeah, exactly. Because was it Bastianini that got that? Yeah, it was Bastianini that Mark bumped out a third, and it cost him a lot of money. So yeah, financially it would be a big hit. But I mean, yes, there's every chance that they can do because Bez is very much on an upwards slope, whereas Pecco unfortunately is going the opposite way.
Would you agree? No, I mean, is Bez like? I mean, is he going to be posting regular results like this? I mean, the form is there, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at the last 6 rounds that we visited. He's been posting results like this in each of them. And he's now just 43 points back of Bagnaia. And if Bagnaia can't get the job done here in Austria, it's much like we said, Mugello and the Netherlands. I mean, this is his track. This has been his sort of domain for the last couple of years. And it was hopeless. So, yeah, I think it's very, very likely that we could see an Aprilia in the top 3 in the championship.
Right. Enough of Italians. Next subject. Arrabbiata 93, Shane Darch and Janice again says, what on earth is going on with Yamaha? Dave, we could do like 15 minutes on this, but try to summarize as quickly as you can why the Japanese firm was so abject here.
No rear grip, basically. They can't accelerate, and if you can't accelerate here, you're completely lost. They can't accelerate because the Yamaha struggles with grip anyway, and then you have this rear tyre with the special heat treatment, which again takes away even more grip, makes it makes it harder to accelerate. Just everything was against them, and I think, basically the 4 Yamahas were perched very solidly at the bottom of the standings all weekend.
Highly unusual.
Yeah, extremely unusual, and it was only thanks to crashes that they ended up getting a single solitary point.
Neil, Yamaha must fucking hate Austria because when the riders don't have brakes and they're jumping off at the at the end of turn 1,
that was Maverick's fault.
Or they're going in protest and revving the tits out of the engine to destroy it.
That was Maverick's fault as well.
Or they're standing up in public and apologising for the fragile state of their engine valves. Let's move on because Jack Miller was telling us, I mean, he obviously had an engine problem that blew up on Saturday. Or was it Friday?
Yeah.
Got my days mixed up now. And then his throttle cable as well broke. He was telling us his media debrief this afternoon. These are things that really perhaps shouldn't be happening on modern-day MotoGP bikes.
Yeah. And it's not like this has always been a terrible... Yeah, they've had bad moments at this track, but it's not like this has always been a horrible place for Yamaha. Quartararo fought for victory in 2021, came really close to winning in 2022.
Yeah.
The other Yamaha riders were saying that the only way to make time was on the brakes, and Fabio was doing still some pretty special things on the brakes. But when a rider of Quartararo's caliber is done in 15th, that's definitely for a reason. And I think it was Luca Marini who spent a little bit of time behind some of the Yamahas before passing them all and finishing 13th. He was saying it looked as though they were having some issues with fuel consumption as well, because I think on Friday Fabio's bike in a straight line was quite fast, whereas today Marini said his bike was really slow. He was able to pass him quite easily on the straight, which indicates that they were having to reduce some of that power because of concerns over the fuel.
Yeah, which in an inline four, because you've got more heat, they sometimes use a little bit more fuel to help cool it down, which is part of it. Is also about the throttle cables. They're not actually really throttle cables. They are cables that go from the throttle on the handlebar to an actuator, usually just in front of the fairing, which then controls the sensor, and it's the sensors which open the butterflies and the injectors. But yeah, the riders prefer. It's generally a rider feel thing, because the riders prefer the feeling of a cable. It gives a certain amount of sort of stick slip. It gives a certain amount of resistance. It'll pull back in a particular way. It just feels a lot more comfortable. But it adds complexity, and every time you add complexity, you're adding something which can break.
I mean, Jack Miller said it's probably one of the best front ends he's ever felt on a motorbike, which could bear them in good stead when we get to balance and part. But
again, it could be interesting to see what happens with the V4, because
it
really looks. Yeah,
somebody in a blue shirt is picking up the phone saying, "Get a move on with that thing. We need it, perhaps."
It will be at Misano. Fabio Quartararo said that he's going to be testing the V4 at Misano. You've got to think that they will wildcard it at Motegi, because that's obviously the place you want to be. Quartararo also let slip that he's going to get to test it at Misano, and then he'll test it at Valencia, and there won't be a lot of time to change it. But the real change will be between Valencia and Sepang, and that's when he expects real performance to come from the bike. But that really does strongly suggest that they've basically the i4, the inline 4 dies at the end of this year and is replaced by the V4, and next year they'll be racing with the V4.
You made Fabio Quartararo cry in Silverstone, but I think he sort of wanted to make us all cry in his debriefs this weekend, because I've already seen him more pissed off, dejected, and just lost. From one manufacturer that's sort of foundering a little bit in Austria to another that's certainly seemed to pick things up slightly. Some good results in the sprint on Saturday. Pedro Acosta taking a second consecutive podium finish there, and then 3 bikes in the top 7 today. And Bastianini looking much revived once more.
Bastianini looked fantastic today. Genuinely,
KTM
looked really good.
Have kind of leveled off their bike development. There's consistency there. The riders have also seemed to have made their own adaptation. Acosta probably more mentally in terms of style, even though he probably is one of the most adaptive young riders in MotoGP. Bastianini particularly, and even Brad Binder. He said he found a trick on the front end of his RC16 that helped him with a better feeling with the front of the bike. I went to talk to his crew chief, Andres Madrid, after the race, and despite some rude booming music from Grassini in the pit box just along the pit lane, he was able to tell us a little bit more about that. So let's hear from Andres. Again, just the first couple of minutes. If you want to hear the full audio, then head to our Patreon page, and then we'll tackle also a little bit about what he said and the KTM's form after that. Andres, thanks for joining us. Everything's been broken down pretty quick, it seems. Of course, Ballantyne Park's only around the corner, but it was encouraging to see Brad looking like his old self both yesterday and today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. We were just talking about that, no? That it's been a long time since we don't see this fighter, because even last year when we did a good qualifying and we were in the front, he was dropping positions back, no? So for me the most important thing of the weekend is exactly this, because now if he's able to push and fight with the guys, then it means his confidence is back, and must be the turning point.
When we spoke earlier in the season, you said it was important for Brad to find his confidence. You guys needed a setup where he could, ride how he wanted. Do you see that more in place now?
Yes, one of the things that we started to realize this weekend is that, for example, all our historic that we know from every track, all the setups that we use everywhere and so on, these recipes, they were not working anymore in 2024. It was an important update coming from Michelin last year. The rear tire allocation changed. There was a new spec that arrived from Michelin, and for some reason all our previous experiences were not, for all the problems we had, some tricks, some solutions, they were not working. So Brad had to change also his riding style. He's been always a rider that was really hard on the brakes. He was making a lot of time on corner entries, but for some reason with these tires probably he had to put the focus in a different way. And then we see that during the last year and a half, Brad was started to change his approach, his cornering maneuvers, and probably at the same time we had to change the setup of the bike to follow his new riding style. So this job, sometimes last year we try to tell Brad, okay, let's do it this way, and maybe he was not able to switch because he's been riding this bike for several years, and to switch from one style to another, you cannot do this in one day or 1 month. You know, it takes some time, and little by little his request has been also different. And if I compare, for example, the setup we use today with the one we use in 2023, it's quite different, and you would not expect to use this type of setup in such a track like Spielberg, where you have to put the focus in. Normally you think, Spielberg, we need to focus on the upstairs braking. So this is something that you have to do it together with the rider, you know. And I think this weekend we made a click of both. Both went into the same direction, and the rider said, okay, now I have the confidence to push, knowing that the wheels are going to stay.
Andreas, that was what Brad was telling us yesterday, or maybe even Friday. He said that, you and the guys managed to give him something on the front end so it felt more stable. Can you just tell us in simple terms what you found or what you did?
Well, yes, basically we played with a lot of stuff during the year.
I mean, it's sad that Maverick Vinales couldn't actually compete this weekend. It looks like Polo Spargaro will probably jump in for Hungary. He's the most likely candidate. But I don't know. There's hope, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you could tell because for the past few races, if you go down to the pit lane, what you see in the boxes is 4 nearly identical KTMs, and it has taken half a season for that to happen. That means that they've found a direction, and that direction is working. They had a new aero upgrade that helps a lot with the turning of the bike. Because the aero helps to turn, it means they're more gentle on the tyres, which helps performance. Pedro Acosta as well. I think Pedro Acosta has had a talking to by Aki Io. He's had a very good talk with Pit Byra, which I think has been a fairly fierce conversation between the two of them. They've both got a lot of things straight between. They've obviously both expressed a lot of frustration. Pedro knows that his future is, or at least next year, is with KTM, and that mental change, I think, is what is making the difference.
And his aero upgrade helped a little bit with the turning of the bike. So you'd hope that would also have some profit when we get to Hungary next week. And it's going to be, slightly more condensed layout, let's say, than the simplicity of the Red Bull ring. Another manufacturer, just quickly to tackle this one, because the presentation was made on Friday. We have more information now. It's the Harley-Davidson Bagger World Cup. A quite immaculate sort of exposition made by the Americans. And we tackled this a little bit on our Paddock Notes show, but I just want opinions from you guys on the validity of this series. I mean, should we get excited about it? Is it like hot nonsense? Or, is it a worthy addition to sort of like the MotoGP support card?
It's something different. I think it's, from the one side, Dorna trying to do something different and trying another way to find a way into the American market and try and gain some sort of relevance with some people that might not really be overly aware of what MotoGP is. Harley is a massive historic brand, and it's kind of synonymous with certain sections of America, road trips, and riding, lifestyle as well. Yeah, and I think from Harley's side as well, I was speaking to someone from them over the weekend. They said they had a 4% market share in Europe, so they're clearly trying to eat into that a little bit more. It was interesting, their explanation. There's going to be a 6-round series next year with 2 races at each round, and the 6 rounds that they've chosen, obviously Kota, they had to do one in America, but the other 5, their explanations were they're great tracks to ride a Harley to, and they include, I think, Mugello,
Assen,
Silverstone, here in Austria as well. Scenic places where it's nice to take your motorbike for a couple of days, as Dave can attest.
Well, yeah, Assen, lots of long straight roads, so all good. Very much Harley country, and it's just a way to try to reach the European market, because they really need to expand their sales and their customer base.
Yeah, and I mean, I know some people love bagger racing. Some people really don't. Hi, Steve English. But it's something different, and maybe it will appeal to some people. As I said, it's not going to be like MotoGP, but it's
going to sound great.
It's going to sound great.
I'd love to see you on a Harley, Dave. I mean, if Jeff from anyone else from Harley is watching or listening to this, David Emmett is ready to be.
I did quite very, very seriously look at their what is it, the Trans-America, whatever their adventure bike was, because that actually looked really, really like a class piece of kit, but it ended up being the GS.
Moving on, just before we get to our hire and fire sections, a reminder that we're backed by Renthal. So if you're after some new bars, grips, chain wheels, then head to renthal.com.
If, for example, you've fallen over and you've bent your handlebars, then maybe you want to head to Renthal to look at some upgrades.
Unfortunately, Dave, I'm not sure if Renthal do screens.
They don't, unfortunately.
I had a very pleasant surprise on Saturday when I left the track, because I went into the parking area, which is a little bit kind of frenetically organised here in Austria, and I found this very attractive red BMW parked next to me with an ugly-looking broken screen. Can you just explain quickly to the listeners how on earth you've damaged your motorcycle this time?
Yes, well, I went to the top of the Großglockner Pass, went over the Großglockner Pass, and then got to the top, and then thought I'd put it on its side stand, but then forgot that mountains aren't flat, and so it wasn't standing over, and so it fell over into somebody's car. I left a note. They've got back in touch. My insurance will be paying for the unfortunate dent that I put in their car. But yes, I broke the screen. Fortunately, the rest of the bike, the only thing that other that was damaged was my GPS holder, but that's fine. I shall
and
live
your pride.
And my pride. Honestly, the worst thing about breaking your screen is you're looking at it all the time, so you've got this physical reminder all of the time of your failure. What an absolute idiot you are. So yes, very much that.
See, also mirrors.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. One of our Patreon prediction questions was the latest excuse David gives for falling over on his bike, and actually we have a winner, because Nicholas Jungerfeld said gravity is different in Austria, and this is correct, because I live at 18 meters above sea level, and I fell over at about approximately 2,300 meters above sea level, and the difference in gravity is 0.007 meters per second. So yes, gravity. The further you get away from the centre of the planet, the less gravity is. So that's definitely what I'm blaming it on.
No, never have I wanted to edit more of the podcast of that section than ever we recorded before.
This will be in the chopping floor.
Yeah, 100%. We'll put it somewhere as an outtake. But yeah, useful info there, Dave. Thanks very much. Neil, you certainly wouldn't hire David Emmett to be, a courier or like a motorcycle Uber version. But who would you hire from the MotoGP field from this weekend?
Can I make a double hire?
Okay.
Well, I'm
higher and higher.
Yeah, higher and higher. Fitting that we're in Austria, because we've been going higher and higher on our way up to Spielberg, right? But yeah, I'm going to go for Pedro Acosta and Enea Bastianini, because I thought they had both excellent weekends. There was reason to believe that the sort of unique conditions that we had at Brno played into KTM's favour. They certainly did. New track surface, insane levels of grip. Also, the fact that Ducati weren't able to fall back on years and years of previous experience, relevant experience at that layout, definitely helped. But then we came here, and it was, a solid weekend. I mean, Costa 3rd place in the sprint, 4th place on Sunday, and Bastianini just looks like a rider completely rejuvenated this year. One of my moments of the weekend actually was Acosta when he ran out of fuel in qualifying, pushed his bike through the kind of entrance without kind of getting his little pass stamped or anything like that. And then I think someone from IRTA came down to give him a sticker for the next time he tries that. A scooter sticker to let him officially pass through the entrance into the paddock. And then after that, he went out on his second bike and did this absolutely insane lap, which didn't eventually get him what he deserved, but it was kind of Marc Marquez-esque in how ridiculously hard he was kind of pushing the front at certain points around the track. It was just a phenomenal watch. And this is kind of in an era where you maybe don't see riders able to, show the kind of the true kind of madness of MotoGP machines. Everything's a little bit more controlled in this current era. So that was fantastic. And yeah, Acosta, what we've discussed before, he's just a more mature figure now, and I think he's accepting of his role in KTM, and he's producing performances that we were expecting earlier in the season. And Bastianini, for his part, he was saying on Thursday something quite interesting, that the whole swirl of negativity around KTM, the doubts about the future of the company, very valid concerns, impacted his kind of impression on what he could do with this project. And he said, speaking to the new CEO, Gottfried Neumeister, back in Brno, and to Pit Beirer, and just having this renewed sense of, okay, this is maybe going somewhere, changed his mindset. And we've seen that. So yeah, both Acosta and Bastianini super impressive. And I think, I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think they're both here to stay now in the top six.
The onboard footage from the return to the pit box was brilliant. It seemed like something that Red Bull conjured up. And actually, Acosta's crew had said to him, "You got enough fuel in the tank to do 2 laps." And inexplicably, he rode past the pit lane to begin a third one, and of course ran out of fuel, and that's what necessitated the alternative trip backwards. But it was pretty good for content, I thought. A different side of MotoGP.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. My hire is going to be Joan Mir. I thought he was great. Actually, I'll tell a lie. In the last 5 laps, I was almost looking through my fingers, thinking, "Do not crash again, Joan, please." I think his record for actually getting to a checkered flag is probably one of the worst in MotoGP currently. But yeah, a fine ride. Again, like Bastianini, you were saying, a little bit of a rediscovery of form, and he can actually use the Honda. I know it's a track that he quite likes. He came close to victory, as we've mentioned in the past. But a decent day, and for once, Honda sort of outshining their Japanese rival. Who is your hire, Dave?
My hire is Jorge Martin, because it's all going a little bit under the radar because he's still quite a long way back. However, it's basically he's going through what Marco Bezzecchi went through at the start of the year. He's finding his way. He's had a couple of crashes. And walked away uninjured, and that is such an enormous mental boost for him that I think it's really, really. I think it's going to be a really, really important factor for him.
Yeah, and it was interesting what he was saying today. He got a good start, was 9th early on, and he thought, great, okay, cool. And the fact that he didn't sort of aggressively get stuck in on the riders ahead of him meant that he was something of a sitting duck.
Yeah.
And that is just down to lack of experience with the bike.
Yeah.
And also, I think the fact that he's just gradually building his confidence back up is still not completely there to really attack the riders ahead. And then obviously he got shunted a couple of times. He said a couple of riders rode into him. He had to run off track. Then he was back at 14th, and his front tire pressure just went up through the roof. Yeah, but
it feels like he's sort of being a little bit forgotten. He's flying a little bit under the radar because there's lots of stuff going on there. But when you talk to him, you realize, oh, right, okay, no. He's making a lot of progress very, very quickly, and I think he's going to be in contention, and I don't mean winning championships. I don't even mean winning races, but, up at the sharp end much sooner than we think.
That's a very alternative view of a hire, Dave. Full plaudits there. But where there is praise, there's persecution. For the person I would send into one of these deep forests of the mountains behind me, I must to be basically, from this weekend, anyone from Iwata or wearing a blue shirt, because the results do not lie. And I really hope this is just a weekend blip for Yamaha. And, all signs would indicate likewise, because if you could say there's one trend for Yamaha in 2025, they found that 1 lap speed that they've been lacking for a couple of years, but then there's still so much to sort out. So it might sound a bit harsh, but as I've said, the paper is there in black and white.
Yeah, you can look at the results and exactly. The results speak for themselves.
Dave, for you?
For me, I'm afraid it's going to be Pecco Bagnaia because he's just completely lost, and it's impossible to put your finger on exactly what the problem is. Certainly, part of the problem is himself, just a complete lack of confidence, not wanting or not understanding what was going on. I think going back and watching old videos of yourself to give you to remember what you were capable of shows an absolute lack of confidence in your ability right at this moment, and I think Alex Marquez is spot on. If he has 2 good weekends in a row where he can stick with Mark for a little while or stick with Alex, sort of like get stuck in and have a bit of a battle and actually put up a bit of a fight, then that will change his mentality. It'll give him a lot more confidence, and then he can turn this thing around. But right now he's just going backwards.
For you, Neil, who would you lock in the media debrief cabin for?
With you?
With no, with no food or water?
Marco Bezzecchi, just for entertainment purposes. But my loser for this weekend would be Fabio Di Giannantonio. Second weekend in succession that it's been a struggle. This is admittedly a bit of a bête noire track for him. This is obviously the venue where he had that crash, which caused him that big left shoulder injury last year, which forced him out of many races. Had to curtail his season early. But, I mean, it's another weekend where Digi was just off it right the way through. 15th in qualifying. In the race, he was making real hard work of it. I know his bike obviously ended up in flames.
Barbecue.
Yeah. Forced him to retire, but before then he was down in 14th, and he was saying, as we've mentioned, that the sort of the window to get the setup right in the GP25 is super narrow. You have to be very precise, and he keeps harking back to the fact that he lost all of preseason, and that is still hindering him somewhat. But there's been a couple of points this year where you thought he's made the breakthrough. Podium at Mugello, on course for a really good podium at Sachsenring, and it's not really come to fruition since then. So I would say it's slightly concerning for Digia. He's dropped back a couple of positions in the championship, and you just don't really know what you're going to get with him.
Okay. A plug for our Patreon channel. We're going to have some content going up there. We got the Harley Davidson press conference, which was pretty interesting for our upper tier subscribers. So check that out. And of course, we like to do our prediction cast for the weekend. And the Clever Clogs that correctly predicted that Mark would win both the race and the sprint. Oh, wise you are, the growing group. Marcus W. Sorry, Neil.
Yeah, sorry, Dave's to blame for that because we said we were going to make these a little more difficult. And Dave took over prediction duties this weekend. And said,
why was
who's
that?
Going to? Oh, because it's always my responsibility, is it?
Now, children, don't fight over it.
I have stuff to do as well.
Anyway, Marcus W., Tim Kendall, Morgan Caldwell, TPR. I don't know. I guess that's a sort of, an acronym or some sort of name. Jackie Fear, Hardy, Adam Pearce, Joe Colombo, Janice Clayton, Adam Cole, Martin Darlington, Alex F., Lynn Biggs, and Nick Saban, all casting the vote correctly that Mark would clean up. Well done, people. You obviously know a lot more about MotoGP than we do. So I'm being overly cynical there. So good work. And again, keep an eye on Patreon. Come and join us because we are putting more stuff on there. I think the Paddock Note shows are worth it alone. We like to do daily wrap-ups for people that don't listen or haven't joined yet. So there's plenty more material on there. And we go in-depth on subjects that sprout up.
And you get onto the Discord where you can read all of TV Room Raccoon's statistics.
Yeah, plenty of threads going on the Discord channel as well, which is a great addition. Just before we briefly talk about Hungary, because we've done it, in previous podcasts, what are grades for the Austrian Grand Prix? Let's close the book on this one.
7.5 for me, because it was a pleasant surprise. I genuinely really enjoyed the MotoGP race. I didn't even have to force myself to enjoy it. There was lots going on. We had the same winner. That wasn't a surprise. But look behind the winner, and there were all sorts of interesting storylines going on.
And little scraps.
good scraps right the way down the field. Interesting stories. KTM coming good, Aprilia coming good, and yet again this sort of lingering suspicion that Ducati certainly isn't the. I mean, it's not the kind of swashbuckling behemoth that it was, in the last 2 seasons. I genuinely do think for the second weekend in succession now that Aprilia and KTM have real reason for optimism. And when you look at what happened in Brno with the new track surface, we're going to Hungary next weekend, where obviously not many. Well, in fact, no one has any MotoGP data. I think there could be an inkling for a shock on the cards if we're talking about second and third. It's hard to see past Marc again, but and this is a good thing. This fills me with optimism. And when I do these grids, I'm always comparing it to what recent years were like. And last year, I think I've mentioned before, I just lost the will to live. I just was so over MotoGP. Yeah. The racing was so dull, so boring. It was just a Ducati whitewash, and there was nothing really interesting to talk about. But I thought today was cool. And surprisingly so, which added to, I think that knocked my grade up maybe another
nice to see you with a bit
one or
more
two.
Verve, Neil. A bit more sort of, post summer break. The enthusiasm's back. It's worked. And Dave, I know for you, Red Bull Ring is something you sort of classify as sticking to the bottom of your shoe as a track. But, was there anything about today that sort of improved your opinion somewhat?
I mean, the racing was class. The racing was very good. I mean,
it didn't feel like 28 laps, did it?
No, it didn't. No, because, like last year, 28 laps felt like 117. It felt like the Suzuka 24-hour. But, yeah, it was a really good race. It was really interesting. I had been dreading it, but it was just a very, very good race. And there was the passes are spectacular because the only way to get past is to just stuff it up the inside and close your eyes. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, no, 7 out of 10. It's still just a terrible track. Also, the food was spectacular this week. So, yeah, no, excellent.
7 for me. I disagree on the track. And also...
That's because you're wrong, Adam.
Also, there were people here. There was nowhere near the crowd that we've seen in previous years. And, of course, the KTM Grandstand was a non-entity on this occasion. That must hold, 6,000-7,000 people, I would have thought. I mean, it's vast. But there was an atmosphere. I walked up into the fan zone on Saturday. The weather was good for the most part, apart from some... We've always mentioned Austria, there's been weird weather, but there was like a bit of a thunderstorm on Saturday evening.
Yeah, I've been riding home every night in thunderstorms.
Yeah. So, that kind of reared its head again. But I thought that there was, an upbeat kind of vibe about the place. 50,000, just under 50,000.
Yeah, just under 50. I mean, it's down. Yeah. I think about 15,000, 16,000 from last year. So that is a concern. 49,000 or 50,000 is not a great attendance, but I think that is a lot of that is Dorna's fault because of the fact that they've put 4 races together, which are all drawing from the same pool of spectators.
In mid-August, it's an expensive GP as well, but for me, it's still probably one of the more essential ones, and it'll be in mid-September next year. So let's see if that sort of improves the fortunes when it comes to people paying and coming in through the grate.
Bring your spiky tires.
Could be pretty mad. Okay, then Hungary. We're going to Ballantine Park. The debut.
No, I've actually eaten. I already had.
Sorry.
I've already eaten.
Have we done the hungry gag already? That's going to be coming up a few times, I think.
Adam does the dad jokes on the
show.
Sorry.
Right, yeah.
Yes, that's my expertise. How dare you? We're not going to talk predictions, but as you mentioned, Neil, I think you pretty much summed it up. It's going to be a brand new test for everybody. Therefore, it does give it high novelty factor, I think, on the 2025 MotoGP calendar. And, the latest chatter basically is that there's something like a 40 to 50,000 attendance at the facility. It hasn't sold out, but then the event is going ahead, and there seemed to be some sort of for quite a while now some uncertainty about whether the Hungarian Grand Prix, the first one since 92, so quite some time.
The Lawson race with Kajiva.
Yes.
There were concerns about the asphalt coming up because they've had to put in a lot of extra chicanes to make it safe. There were concerns about the asphalt coming up those seems to have been allayed. The Superbike racing happened. That was, I mean, like the races were fairly successful. It's not a great track. It's certainly too tight for MotoGP. It would be interesting for Moto3. It could sort of turn into quite a fun little Moto3 race. But yeah, it's not going to be a great MotoGP race. But there'll be a race. People will turn up again because it's back to back with Austria, and it's like a 3-hour drive or something, or 4-hour drive. It's virtually next door. It's too close together. It's never going to sell out. Also, it's a new track, and so that also means that they'll wait to see how the first year is. So it was always going to be difficult, but we'll see.
Lots to discover. That's it from Austria. Dave, it's looking quite dark now for you to head back to your accommodation.
Fortunately, I have very good lights.
Yes, you haven't broken those, so they still work.
Give them time.
David, Neil, thank you ever so much. Thanks also to Renthal, and we'll be back in a matter of days with our first podcast from Ballanton Park.